Welcome. I'm Jordan.
I'm Chad.
We are
And
KAJAM.
we are KAJAM.
This is Dragon Quest III. Created in 1988 by Yuji Horii and Akira Toriyama, Koichi Nakamura.
Of course, it was created for the NES, or rather, the Famicom Disk System. That's what the Famicom Disk System, right?
No, I think it was just created for the Famicom. I don't think it required the
I don't
use
know
of
what
the
the
disk
difference is.
system. The disk system.
What's the
We'll
difference?
talk about that. Okay, fine. I'll get it out of the way now. Disk system was the first console to have a save feature. They used floppy disks. Before that, the base Famicom only used cartridges.
I preferred putting in the Castlevania 3 password myself.
Yeah, no, I don't. So
We
the
go to
version
this
we're
Dragon
playing.
Quest.
The version we're playing is was made for the Super Famicom in 1996. It is a full-blown remake with
1996, the same year that Panzer Dragoon came out for the Sega Saturn.
actually, Panzer Dragoon came out in 1995. Panzer Dragoon Zwei came out in 1996.
Oh no! Start over. Start the video over.
No, can't do it. Here we've got an extended opening, which was not present in the original game, featuring the quest of the hero's father, Ortega, who is about to be summoned, and he's gotta go defeat the Dark Lord Baramos before war can begin. He's already spread his influence a bit throughout the land, but by the time we will set out on our adventure, it will have spread a little bit further. So to give you a little background with our experience with this series, we started playing the Dragon Quests in 2019 after, at the tail end of 2018,
Feels like those 800 years ago.
Yeah, learning about, that our preconceptions regarding JRPGs were maybe a little unfounded.
Yeah, I thought they were old and crusty.
I had played Earthbound and the Mario RPGs up to that point, but I figured those would be exceptions. Played Chrono Trigger, and turns out I was completely wrong. And Chrono Trigger also involved Yuji Horii as a scenario writer. And that convinced me to get into Dragon Quest V as my first entry of the series. But as I was nearing the end of Dragon Quest V, my curiosity turned to the third entry of the series, incidentally, as I was researching it. And it kind of stole away my attention. I ended up finishing that game first, if you could believe it. Dragon Quest V is an incredible narrative. I ended up finishing that one shortly after, but Dragon Quest III, once it gets your hooks in you, or its hooks in you, rather, it does not let go.
For me, I first, my entry into real non-Pokemon JRPGs, and I still love Pokemon. My first, Jordan started with Dragon Quest V, Dragon Quest III. I went right into Final Fantasy VII because I saw a screenshot that looked cool, and it completely changed my entire life.
Yeah.
Now I'm obsessed with the number 7. That might have happened before, but I'm obsessed with number 7, and even more obsessed maybe with early 3D graphics around the N64, Sega Saturn, PS1 era. I love early 3D, but eventually I would play Dragon Quest III, and it too would change my life.
Yeah, Dragon Quest III is, it's the role-playing game. We have to do this one first, because it set so many standards, and yet it still remains such a unique game in its own series and in the genre. It's really quite remarkable of a thing. And even if you play, no matter which version you play, as long as it's not the Switch or iOS versions, you're bound to be in awe of just the immersive scale of this adventure. And here we've got the iconic volcano battle between Ortega and this massive demon.
This battle is much cooler in the NES version of the game, but it was not present in the original Famicom version of the game.
Right, it was added for the NES version, and then reworked for the Super Famicom version into something a little bit more cinematic, though Chad and I both agree that the fight choreography of the NES version might just be a little bit more impressive. Now,
and generally, we're going to talk a lot about little differences between the versions of the game.
So we'll try not to linger on them
overall,
too much, yeah.
Yeah, but overall, really, it comes down to your aesthetic preferences more than most other things. I personally, I think I like the NES version the most, than maybe the Game Boy Color version. But the Game Boy Color version is pretty much identical to the SNES version, just with a little bit more added stuff, and again, different aesthetics.
Oh god, what's going on? What happened to him?
I think he fell in the volcano.
I mean, that would be a pretty accurate assessment, but
So we both played this version of Dragon Quest 3 first.
right. I recommend
did not fail to impress.
I recommend playing this version first if you're getting into the series. It's a little more approachable than the NES version. However,
it's faster.
However, I do hold, after playing Dragon Warrior 3, 1992 on the NES, that it contains almost everything that I loved about this version as well. So don't let anybody tell you that the Dragon Quests only got good with the remakes, because I don't think that's true. At least in the case of 3 and 4, they were always great. Before that, I can't speak very much for them.
And of course, the Game Boy Color version is very similar to this version, if you happen to prefer Game Boy Color's aesthetics.
Right. So here they're discussing the loss of Ortega, and how no one else is capable of slaying the Archfiend except Ortega's child.
Us.
We will succeed where Ortega failed. Little baby boy. Now, this is the third game in the Erdrick trilogy, as it's called, because all 3 games feature some sort of whispers about the legendary hero by that name. Lodo in Japanese. And it is, I believe, probably the most culturally significant game in the series in Japan. It is the game that made Dragon Quest into the cultural phenomenon that it is.
It is by far the second best Dragon Quest after Dragon Quest 4 for the NES.
I love Dragon Quest 3, 4, and 5 the best, though I have played all of 11 up to the post game. I've played a good chunk, like 20 hours of 8. I've played 7 hours of 7, around there. Some of 2, some of 1, and some of 9. That's right.
I've played 1, I've played 3, I've played 4, 5, 8. I've played a bit of 7, played a bit of 9, played a bit of 11.
Right.
4 is my favorite, then 3, then probably 8, then probably 5, then 1.
Yeah. Case in point, if you like one Dragon Quest, you can get into them all, but don't mistake that for them being too similar. This is a wild exaggeration in the community that I think it's our responsibility to correct.
These games are all very good.
Very good and very distinct from one another. So we're going to create a new adventure. And of course, we will be going by the name KAJAM.
KAJAM!
Because we are KAJAM.
KAJAM! We can never... Anytime we say it, we have to say it at the same time.
We can try.
I thought you were about to say it.
Little known tip about the Dragon Quest games. When you're going to send your message speech, always put it on 8. It allows you It allows you to advance the battle text on your own manually. I don't think this is well communicated enough, but even if you're playing the NES games, you can get through battles really quickly if you do this. I think that's a really important little feature.
That just makes the most sense.
Yeah. And here we are.
Here's the beautiful opening.
Now this opening
of this game was added into the remix. This is the first game that it would appear in, and it would become a very iconic aspect of the game. Though not an extremely, absolutely necessary one.
Right. But it is great to introduce one of the big new features of this remake. KAJAM, heed my voice. It is I, the ruler of everything. Soon, KAJAM, you will stand before me as a great hero. I forgot to say it at the
same time as you.
Oh. But before that happens, I want to find out what kind of person you are. Now answer me honestly. Are you ready?
Yes.
First, please let me know your real name. We will be going by...
Jordan.
Jordan. This is not... Don't use this as a ship name.
Why not?
Don't do it.
What's wrong with that?
I see you, Tumblr.
Oh, don't be mean.
Which month are you born in?
I don't know. 8? No, let's put on 6.
6, sure. And which
we should put on 7. Put it on 7.
7 month?
Yeah, just put on 7.
Okay, I don't think we can go back, so...
That's okay.
We were born a Gemini. Now, Jordan, I'd like to ask you some questions now. Don't think too much about the right answer, just give me a quick, honest answer. It'll make it easier for me to learn about your personality. Well then, let us proceed. Do you consider your life to be boring?
Do you, Jordan?
No, not really. Despite the circumstances,
not
would you
when-
always
not
try to
when we
help
have
someone in
Dragon
need?
Quest 3.
We're gonna alternate answers.
Yes, I would say yes.
Do you lose sleep at night because you get lost in your own thoughts? I do. Do you think that you dream a lot?
I dream a lot. Mostly about food.
Have you ever had a dream that somebody was chasing you? Of course. Do random
Yes.
strangers bore you? Do you believe that fortune tellers can predict the future? We've talked about this one. I don't think so.
Nope, definitely. I don't think so. They could accidentally, though.
Would you consider yourself to be physically active?
Definitely not. Absolutely zero.
Do you prefer cats over dogs? I do not. Do you tend to get embarrassed when somebody gives you praise?
Nope.
Would you consider yourself to be physically active? So this actually happens also in the Switch version. Something with the coding circles back around.
It happens in the NES version as well.
It can't happen in the NES version. This doesn't exist.
No? Oh, what am I talking
in
about?
The GBC version.
Just take that off the record.
Okay. Gonna say no to that again. A pretty popular. That's a bit of a fan translation hookup.
Am I a pretty popular? Yeah, I'm a pretty popular.
Sure. Do you consider gossip to be annoying? Kinda. Do you think there's more sorrow in the world than joy?
Yes, unfortunately I do.
I think I understand your personality now. Well, let's see how you do with this.
See, after you answer all the questions, you are placed into a scenario.
Oh.
This is a very clear one.
You appear to be lost. If you head west from here, you'll reach an exit of this forest. By the way, if you see a rock, would you mind pushing it over here? I'll give you a handsome reward.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do, Jordan?
Well, I think we should push that rock.
Yeah, I think we push the rock and then we leave.
I think maybe we should push it more than once.
No, I don't think that's not nice. We're taking advantage of an old man.
He wants this rock.
Yeah, but he doesn't want it like 8 times over.
Here's 10 gold for your troubles. Why not do it again? We can get 10 more gold.
No, we don't want to take all his gold. Okay, I'm going to roll dice.
You're going to roll a dice?
Yeah, I'm going to roll dice.
Where do you have a dice
Tails.
on you?
Tails, you win.
Okay. I've never seen a dice with a tail symbol on it.
Well, I flipped my phone over.
Oh. It's not really dice, though. 10 more gold.
Can't believe this.
Cha-ching.
I'm going to take all his... This is money he could have used to buy old people's stuff.
We're leaving. We're leaving. He got 2 rocks.
He only wanted 1 rock.
He can't get rocks by himself. He's an old man. He did him a favor.
How do you know he needs any more than 1? You took his money.
He gave it to me freely. I feel as though I know what kind of person you are now. KAJAM, you're actually pretty vain. Uh-oh. Your goals are quite lofty. That's not bad, but it makes you think rather unrealistically. You have a bad habit of comparing yourself to others. Try to be more content with what you have. Maybe you'd live a happier life.
I'm content. I got personality.
Soon morning will come and you will wake up from your slumber. I look forward to meeting you again someday.
The personality that you are given determines the stats that you gain upon level ups and a couple other little things. And both you, the player character's hero, and your party members all have personalities that can be changed by equipping different equipment or using books that change their personality.
A nice gameplay element that helps characterize these silent protagonists in a way that wasn't really featured in previous versions of this game, or the one previous version. It was KAJAM's 16th birthday. KAJAM, wake up, KAJAM.
KAJAM.
And a trope is born. Your mother wakes you up. KAJAM, it's morning, time to wake up. Today will be the first time that you've ever been to the castle. I do believe I've raised and prepared you as a strong young man for this very day.
I liked Pokemon a lot as a kid. I liked Gen 4. I played a lot of Diamond and Platinum. But only after rediscovering, or truly discovering JRPGs, did I go back and play Pokemon Crystal, Pokemon Emerald, and discover just how much I love Pokemon. Yeah,
it's most people don't consider Pokemon alongside other JRPGs, but it very much does come from that same tradition. In
Especially, Pokemon Crystal is a very Dragon Quest III game, which we will get into later.
One of the big inspirations for Pokemon was Satoshi Tajiri, creator of Pokemon, wanting to trade enemy drops with other friends that he had playing Dragon Quest with, but it was just impossible on the NES. Now it's time for you to get going. Come along with me so I can see you off at the castle gates.
Desire to trade items must have also been a very significant motivator for the creation of Diablo 1.
Could have been.
It must have been. Must have been.
The motivation to trade items, not necessarily from this
Well,
game.
Diablo 1 had a pretty substantial co-op element to it.
Sure. Now just head straight on into the castle, and don't forget your manners in front of the king. Nice little thing you can do here. Where are you going, KAJAM? I've been anxious to meet the king, and yet you hesitate. Something bothering you? You can dip. You can leave, and your mother will be disappointed, and the king will be upset if you if you go up and talk to him and you're late. But
it will also alter your personality type.
Yeah, it will. But we're going to go be a nice little boy and meet him. Though in Dragon Quest III, nothing is given to you. You can just dip out. You can leave and go on the adventure without ever talking to the king or making party members. You have to do all of those things yourself. It tells you where to go, but it's your responsibility.
A running theme within Dragon Quest is that so much of the story, so much of the game's content is told through these optional interactions with NPCs that you can completely miss over. And really, it's your drive to explore, to talk to people, to learn more about the world that will allow you to know where to go, what to do, and what you're doing.
Right. And as we're going to see now, we can talk to people all over the castle who will give us different leads about different items we can find and people we'll encounter all over the world. The thief Bakoda, who once wreaked havoc in our town, is now in jail. Gives us a little bit of insight into the state of Aliahan, the country here, but also maybe we can go to the jail and see what's up with this guy. Have you had a chance to meet our princess yet? I believe she's over in the courtyard right now. And also, note as we go by, we found like several different kinds of doors, none of which we can open at this point. But they're going to stick in our mind.
Gray doors.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to leave this castle town anymore because of Baramos. I absolutely can't stand this place anymore. And every day is the same here. I tried sneaking out once, but my father ended up catching me.
Baramos.
Maybe we'll find a princess trying to sneak out of a castle in the next game.
Spoiler!
I yearned to see the hero Ortega. That's why I became a soldier here. But then Ortega passed away. No, Ortega would never have died so easily. He must still be alive somewhere. I just know it. Now this guy's in denial. We're going to hear a lot about people discussing and talking about Ortega, remembering Ortega's adventure all over the world. Because he made quite a name for himself as an adventurer. And we can't open this door either.
There's a third kind of door that we cannot unlock right now.
You don't have the key to free me? Get lost! This is a jail. To talk to a prisoner, just speak to them through the bars. Nope. Damn it! I'm the infamous thief Bakoda! How could I let some old man steal my key? Where is he, you ask? He lives in the Najimi Tower. If only I still had the thief key. But it still wouldn't help me get these jail doors open.
And here's one of millions of examples of Dragon Quest's beautiful method of storytelling. We just decided to talk to a couple people on the first floor of the castle. They mentioned Bakoda. They mentioned Bakoda's thief's key, and they mentioned Baramos. They mentioned a princess. And when we go around, we talk to these NPCs. We learn more, and then we discover when certain names might be mentioned, places might be mentioned. Then we go and talk to Bakoda, who's in the jail of the castle. He tells us he's lost his thief's key. An old man has stolen it, and that the old man who stole it is hanging out in a place called the Najimi Tower.
And this guy knows where Najimi Tower is. That there's a mountain cave that leads there. So now we gotta locate a cave.
This is the first building in the game, and it's already weaving this story for us just through interactions with these NPCs.
I think Dragon Quest doesn't get enough credit for being almost like a detective game. You're jotting down different leads. People all over the world have information, and you have to take it upon yourself to encounter them and jot down notes and find them. Like when I first played this game between classes in college, in my freshman year, I was constantly just writing down all kinds of locations and people I've met and things that they've told me so that I could follow their leads to the next item or next important encounter. Must equip yourself with weapons and armor. It's not enough just to carry them. Sorry to lecture you. Because KAJAM's personality is vain, I've got nothing to worry about.
I mean, if you don't like going around and talking to NPCs, for one, Dragon Quest maybe isn't for you, but for
Yeah.
two, you can talk to just a few people. You can look at people whose sprites are interesting you. Maybe there's an NPC who's doing something that looks interesting, and because of how well the games spread out the information, just talking to a handful of the NPCs, you'll gather a lot of very useful information, and the game will probably lead you into wanting to talk to every single NPC.
Right, and then, like we talked about this during the Zelda 2 video, this is a game where you don't really need to talk to anybody to get through it. All you really need to do is know the information that they're going to tell you.
Exactly.
They're not flags that you need to raise or to tag in order to progress. Welcome, KAJAM, son of the great hero Ortega. You must have already heard this from your mother by now, but your father Ortega met his death after falling into a volcano. It must have happened in the heat of a big battle. I hereby request that you follow in your father's footsteps. You will certainly fulfill Ortega's last wish by restoring peace to our world. Yeah. You must defeat the Archfiend Baramos. This name remains unknown in the world of men, so you must not speak it. If things remain unchanged, the world will soon be destroyed by Baramos. We must prevent this at all costs. KAJAM, you must defeat Baramos. Though I fear you may suffer your father's fate if you do this task alone, you can find some very reliable companions at Ruida's Tavern. Or as it's known in the NES version,
Luisa's Place.
Godspeed, KAJAM.
KAJAM!
And good luck.
And that's about it. If you talk to the king and then never read a single NPC's dialogue for the rest of the game, you will be able to complete the game.
You don't even need to talk to the king at all. It's pretty astonishing. You don't have to get party members. And there is actually a mechanical advantage to not getting party members, because the fewer party members you have, the more experience each of them will gain after a battle.
And we are going to absolutely tear to shreds this party member system, because it is my opinion that the party members in this game are pretty much the core of Dragon Quest III. They are the essence of the
lifeblood. This guy's alluding to the day-night cycle. We've already got a tip that to the north is the village of Reeve, so we have a little destination. What's in that barrel over there, I wonder?
Could be a seed.
Ooh, 25 gold pieces.
25 gold.
At the beginning of the game, you want every piece of gold you can find.
Before we start this up, most games that I have played, even now, have pretty conventional sorts of characters and storytelling. Final Fantasy VII, Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time. Games generally introduce characters that have some sort of personality, and they have a lot of dialogue. When I think of a game that doesn't do that, a game that has characters that are more... it's hard to even start discussing it. I guess we should just go right into it first.
Yeah, well, I mean, when people talk about Dragon Quest III, one of the things they really try to do to sell it is by talking about how it has such a rich storyline, and that gives people expectations when they go in that they'll get something like Final Fantasy VI or VII, or even IV, that have these really long, dramatic, and plot twisty sort of narratives. But Dragon Quest has always thrived on this minimalism, this investigative style of storytelling, up until maybe Dragon Quest VIII and XI.
Dragon Quest III is the JRPG, which one could also assume means that Dragon Quest III is the #1 greatest adaptation of Dungeons & Dragons into the video game medium.
You know, there have been a lot of contenders, but for my money, this just might be the very best.
You go to Ruida's Tavern, you're asked to input a name, and of course we're going to start with Bagu. The guy, because Jordan and I, we both know Bagu.
We know Bagu, so we're allowed to pass.
You choose their gender, and then you choose their class.
And which one are we going with? Let's just do a quick overview of the classes. Warriors are very tanky. They're strong, but you have to constantly buy them equipment to keep them at optimal attack power and defense.
And equipment is a huge aspect of the game.
Right. You're going to be hoarding money and trying to ration it out as best you can, divide it amongst your party members in terms of what you want to spend equipment on. What do you think is the optimal way to distribute your items amongst them? So the fighter is very fast, very strong with a lot of critical hits. though they're not going to get a lot of equipment, so they're not going to be able to. They're going to be little lulls in the game.
There's gonna be
where,
parts of the game where they aren't perfectly equipped,
right?
and you have to wait a while to get something new.
But they do pay off quite a bit. The mage is very frail, kind of a glass cannon. They have a lot of MP, a lot of attack spells. They have got some support spells as well.
Very typical mage.
Right, but you're going to want to keep them at the back of the party. The cleric is sort of a healer type. It can also do some attack spells, but mostly specializes in support. Has some decent defense and can also
not only does the cleric have
items.
healing spells, but it also has a lot of supportive spells like debuffs and buffs, as well as surround, which is I guess that counts as a debuff. They're not nearly as frail as the mage is in terms of defense and attack.
Right, though the mage has buy kill, which can raise your attack power. It's very useful against bosses. The dealer or the merchant is kind of a gimmicky class. Can appraise your items, can tell you what they do, because that's not really a given in this game. You need the dealer to do that. And,
very useful skill.
Can find extra gold after battle, and they have a very critical story use. They're actually pretty powerful at the start of the game, but their use kind of falls off later on because they stop finding equipment that they can use. The jester or the goof off
worthless
is a pretty iconic class because they're kind of all funny flavor text. Sometimes they won't listen to your commands in battle, but they have a
whether
very
or not they
use.
attack is pretty much decided by the whims of a roll of the dice. They will very often, every other attack maybe even, just not do anything at all.
A literal clown. The thief is a high luck class and also high speed, and they learn some special abilities that only the thief can learn to help examine whether treasure chests are mimics. Can find where certain collectibles and mini medals are hidden, so they're good for item collection. But all of these classes have some secondary uses. If you're we'll discuss sort of the breadth of the class system maybe a little bit later on. We don't want to spoil it too much. But what are we going to make Bagu here?
We're going to make Bagu a dealer.
A dealer, okay.
Yeah. Bagu's gigantic, very useful, and he knows his way around money.
Right. That's how he got so popular.
When you select your name, your gender, and your class, you're then given a handful of seeds which you can distribute among the stat points, which sometimes they'll give you 1, sometimes they'll give you 2, sometimes they'll give you 3, maybe 4 or 5 stat points, and basically it's just a means of further customizing your individual characters.
Right, but they already have some slightly random stats within a certain range for every single class you can assign them. Every single time you play the game, your party will be ever so slightly different.
I think
if you choose the same members.
Bagu would just annihilate anyone in the world. Let's give him 2 strength and then 3 stamina. There's no way to take down Bagu. There's just no way.
There we go. Seems pretty stubborn. I'd say that, that's a bit judgmental.
He does live alone.
Yeah, that's true. He refuses to hang out with his pet slime who's sleeping in town.
And here's a little fun fact about The Hobbit. Bilbo Baggins' dad's name is Bungo.
That's right.
That is Bungo Baggins, which I think is just an incredible fact.
Absolutely fantastic.
I was not made aware of until yesterday.
And that is a male. And which of the classes is he? A warrior.
Yeah, Bungo. I mean, with a name like Bungo Baggins, no one's going to be able to stand in his way.
Though we might be aware of a few.
All strength. All strength.
All strength.
He's the strongest man alive.
I think we should give him a little bit of agility, so he's not the.
No. All strength.
One agility.
No.
One.
No.
One.
No.
One.
No. Oh, I quit.
He's this.
Oh, quit. Yes. Yes. Bungo Baggins.
Pretty valiant.
Yes.
Well, we've just got one left. I think we decided on Bogus.
Yeah, let's go Bogus. This is an original creation. Now, I'll save it. I'll save it for a second. We're gonna make Bogus first. Okay. There's so much to say about this party system. Let's make Bogus. Let's probably make Bogus a cleric.
Okay. Got one cleric in the party.
And you can choose these stats. I've been a bit domineering.
All right. Well, I think that maybe we should make Bogus a bit more well-rounded than the others. Give a higher agility because we want her to be able to cast spells early on in the turn lineup.
Especially as a healer,
Higher
very
wisdom.
useful. Very useful to be able to cast those heal
Good
spells quickly.
stamina. Yeah, maybe we'll just give one more to each of these. Pretty kindly. I'd say
That's
that describes
very
Bogus
of
well.
Bogus. And just like that, we have created what may or may not be our party for the rest of the game. You know, you can always come back to Rita's Tavern and swap out members, hire someone new, but that's just about it. Aside from a very, very few instances in the game where a party member will talk, these are the characters. These are the people we will be spending the entire rest of the game with.
And
now
go ahead.
There's a bit of a mechanical there's a mechanical system that happens later on. I don't think we'll get into discussing this exact moment, but as far as narrative goes, as far as personality and these characters go, that is it. Very much like creating a character in Dungeons and Dragons. You're role-playing these characters. You are telling a story yourself with them. The game encourages you to get creative and think of these characters however you please. Of course, the beautiful sprite work does a big job augmenting how you perceive the characters. And for me, at least, the huge part of it is I don't really get a full sense of who my characters in Dragon Quest III are until around the middle of the game when I've gotten to see how they perform mechanically. Maybe I'll have a thief who gets critical hits all the time, and they're just the fastest person alive. That's going to change how I perceive their character and this sort of internal story that I'm telling.
Right, and you'll see that their growth alongside this investigative style of storytelling really serves to attach you to the characters. It helps you project onto them and make you feel like you're going on this grand adventure with this growing set of friends that you've got here. Who, by the way, which can change. It's not actually too taxing to grow a whole new party members from scratch if you're later on in the game, because later enemies will give higher amounts of experience, and you'll be able to experiment more readily, possibly more easily than in the original version of this game. But let's step out onto the overworld and listen to that music. Now, I think Chad and I both agree this is the overworld theme.
This is the JRPG overworld theme, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And this is the JRPG battle theme.
Now, something that we want to address kind of early on is the way that the battle system differs from other JRPGs. Now, often it's levied against Dragon Quest that the battle system is pretty stock in terms of, compared to other RPGs, it's pretty much...
Imagine calling a beautiful cheese pizza stock. Embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
But the way that enemies work here is pretty different from any other role-playing game I've encountered, where they come in groups, and that has an effect on the way that melee attacks work. You see, like, you can only select them in their groups. You can't select individuals until later games. But that also, has an effect on the way that you strategize, and especially the way that spells work, because this varies from game to game. But in some of the early Final Fantasy games, you can select all enemies simply by pressing the R button, and that'll have an attack target everybody. But in this game, you can either attack a single enemy, a group, or the whole party using. There are different spells assigned to those tasks, and they increase in their costs. So you have to weigh, how much you're willing to spend to attack all of the enemies, and how specific you want to get with those attacks.
Here we've got a group of ravens, which is 4 ravens all within the same group. Now, if these ravens were all individuals in their own individual groups, we would be able to target each one individually as we please. We'd get to choose Raven A, Raven B, Raven C, or Raven D. But because each of these ravens, they're all under the same group, when we attack, we don't exactly know which one of the ravens our characters will attack. And the AI is pretty good. Even in the original NES games, the AI for this is pretty great across the board. Right. But your characters will decide which raven to attack, and then let's say you've got a soldier who's about to attack. The AI will look at which raven has the lowest HP. Would I be wasting my attack if I hit a raven who's probably only got like 1 HP? And your characters will perform whatever attacks they have. Now, if you're a spellcaster, you'll have something like a blaze, which is a single targeted fire spell that will, again, like the melee attacks, be decided by the AI, but you'll learn spells that will hit everyone in a group. And that's very, very useful because you can spend your MP on a spell that will hit more than just one enemy, usually for less damage as a trade-off. As well, eventually you'll learn spells that, instead of targeting individuals or groups, will just hit every single enemy on the board. And the magic system, the grouping system, the basic attack system, and items that come into play, equipment that have
items are much more crucial here than maybe any other role-playing game outside of possibly Pokemon that I've encountered.
It's to call it stock is mean. You don't call it stock. This is basic. This is the foundational JRPG battle system. If you've played a Pokemon, if you've played a Final Fantasy, you can turn on Dragon Quest III and you'll understand how the battles work. The spiciest thing is the grouping system, but it's what an incredible spice it is. And the equipment is so valuable. Gold is so valuable in Dragon Quest.
I find levels, gold, and experience are generally more valuable here than maybe any other role-playing game I've played, because every single level is like a significant increase in the player's abilities, in each character's capabilities.
The smallest stats, 2 strength,
because you can change it with your personalities.
Changes everything.
The system is extremely carefully constructed. Now, I wanted to draw attention for a second to this kid that lives up here in the inn. He only says a couple of lines, but it's a good example of how Dragon Quest broadens its world and with its NPC storytelling. This kid, he's an orphan. The monsters have killed his parents, and he's living with this innkeeper here. And maybe
burn those bastard monsters who killed my mama and papa.
It's like it's these tiny little threads that add up a lot over time. It might seem like a little tiny thing, but
when there's like
the course of an
8
entire
million
game,
NPCs in this game, all these little bits of dialogue slowly and steadily build up your sense of the setting, your sense of the world and its inhabitants. And the writing is just, even in this fan translation, which I'm going to assume is a pretty good translation, it comes across so well. Dragon Quest's style of NPC writing is so unique. Like, I love Pokemon games, but the NPCs in Pokemon, they don't really compare to this. And of course, there's ways to do different sorts of NPCs that better suit individual games. But if I had to place my bets on what the most impressive, what my favorite NPCs are in a video game, I'd have to give it to Dragon Quest IV. But Dragon Quest III is not at all far off.
It is no slouch in that department, for sure. Heave ho, heave ho! Ah, it's no use, it's just too heavy. Wow, that strength will surely come in handy someday. It's a charming
I told you to put all the stats to strength.
It's a tutorial moment, but it's also a charming little interaction.
See, if you didn't start the game with that little segment with the old man pushing the boulder, you might not know that you can push rocks around, and that little tiny interaction there might, if you happen upon it and choose to engage with it, teach you that you can push rocks.
Right. It's I think Dragon Quest IV might even do a better job tutorializing that little feature.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, suddenly attacked.
I mean, Akira Toriyama, as many people know Akira Toriyama from Dragon Ball, his monster designs for the Dragon Quest series are absolutely iconic. Just look at this frog. That's no ordinary frog. That is a frog gore.
And now it's dead.
However, that is an anteater. There's nothing. He's just an anteater.
Oh, Jam died. I was careless.
Well, that's a good opportunity to talk about how death works in Dragon Quest.
Yeah. No, it's a lot more consequential here than it is in Final Fantasy, for sure.
Okay, in Final Fantasy, in Pokemon, you get items that will pretty easily just revive a dead character. But in Dragon Quest, it takes a long time to learn spells that will revive. And so you're going to have to rely on going to these clerics, these priests all over the world in towns, who will, for a very large fee, some multiplier based on level, revive your party members. And that's a good opportunity to discuss just how valuable gold is in Dragon Quest. Even in the first 2 towns of this game, even in Aliahan and, Reeve?
Yeah.
In those first 2 towns, you go to the shops, it's not just that you can buy 1 or 2 new pieces of equipment.
Right.
There are massive lists of equipment of completely varying usefulness. They'll sell a terrible little dinky first shield, and they'll sell a really like a wooden helmet or something that's very light, but the smallest 2-point increase in defenses will immediately make a difference in Dragon Quest. But if you die, your gold is halved. Any gold, doesn't matter if you have 1 million gold or 2 gold. You die, 50% of that is cut, and that can be serious because of how valuable every little point of defense, every point of offense is. Every medical herb you buy, every potion. Losing your gold like that is huge. So you don't want to have too much gold on hand at a given time. You'd like to spend it, but you'd also like to save it for better pieces of equipment. And that's something that's common in JRPGs, but so rarely is it as powerfully executed as it is in the Dragon Quests that I've played. The gold system is so constantly relevant, so prevalent, so engaging. It just spoils you. It spoils the player. Like, nowhere else am I so concerned about saving every piece of gold. And because it is a JRPG, if you do die, you can make that gold back. You can spend a couple minutes killing enemies. You'll get experience and gold, and then when you've managed to revive everyone, you'll have a bit of an easier go about the dungeon that you failed at.
Right. And I failed that one because I was pretty careless with my equipment. But it does make learning revive spells extremely valuable. It changes everything.
So valuable.
In a way that just doesn't exist in other such games.
To the classes, they're nothing that extremely extraordinary. The weirdest classes are maybe the dealer and the goof off, but even them, they make sense. A merchant who can get you some extra gold and items and appraise items for you. These aren't classes that are really pushing the boundaries of what RPG, of what fantasy classes are and can be, but within the beautiful, elegant framework of Dragon Quest III, the simplest of classes is elevated to something greater. The soldier, the typical warrior, can often come across as a bit plain in other games, but because of how valuable your gold and equipment are in Dragon Quest, and how expensive the best equipment is, and how much the soldier relies on those equipment upgrades, the having a soldier on your party isn't just a wayward decision like, oh yeah, I'll take a fighter, he'll be good. I'll take a soldier, that'll be good. You're making that decision and you're thinking, well, he's gonna be drinking a lot of gold.
It's going to augment your playthrough quite a bit. Every single class choice is going to have a massive ripple effect on the entire game.
And when you consider the number of possibilities in these classes, you could have 3 soldiers, 3 fighters, 3 mages, 2 mages and a cleric, 2 mages and a fighter. I'm no mathematician, but that's a lot of possibilities. And even the most plain, if you decided to take 3 soldiers with you, that would be an extraordinarily unique gameplay experience. You'd have to look at a shopkeeper's equipment and decide, well, how am I going to spread out this gold? I got to buy items for everyone. What am I going to do?
Right.
And it means that every time you play this game, for me, my favorite part of the game is setting up and deciding my party in Luisa's place. That is like the most fascinating. I could spend an hour there choosing people's names, looking at the stats, and seeing what my party's going to be. And it just it shapes the experience.
Right, I've played this game 3 times, twice on the Super Famicom version and once on the original, and none of them have been at all alike in terms of my planning, in terms of, well, I don't know whether we should talk about the broader implications behind the class system just yet, but suffice it to say that choices they really matter in Dragon Quest III.
I mean, if it's your first time playing the game, both of us would strongly recommend.
9 points of HP, 2 points. Like, look at all this. These are massive.
Every stat. Usually in an RPG, in Pokemon, I kind of just like skim over what the stats I get are. But in Dragon Quest, I'm genuinely interested in what stats everyone's gotten. Because the difference between getting 1 HP in a level up and getting 6 HP can be very, very large, and that applies to all of the different kinds of stats.
Right. It's and this is not like a value judgment on other RPGs, saying that this is
Not
just
at all.
the best one of all time. Though it is very close to, if not the greatest
best of all
RPG
time.
of all time. It's just done to highlight the kinds of things that make a Dragon Quest experience very different. It's not quite as breezy as other RPGs experiences can be. You don't play it just to take in fun character developments and twists in a story. It's more about the story that you carve as you adventure through this game.
It is your own storytelling medium.
Yeah, and it is
And
certainly Yuji Horii.
What a beautiful medium it is. I mean,
I think I can equip him.
my first experience playing Dragon Quest III was eye-opening. It was shocking, because I keep bringing up Pokemon because I think that Pokemon maybe comes closest to the way that Dragon Quest III does its characters. When I form a Pokemon team, I sort of make up my own personalities for the Pokemon I have, aided by their abilities, their natures, and maybe in later generations what kind of berries or poffins they prefer, and how they perform mechanically. Like I had a Boober. I had a what's it called?
Which is a Magmar
I know
for all of you at home.
Magmar. I'm used to the Japanese name. I had a Magmar in my first playthrough of Crystal that became a legend. That Magmar dealt the final blow to Red's Venusaur, and that's a moment I've never forgotten. My Magmar, who I just kind of got it in an egg, and I was like, oh, Magmar, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll see how Magmar does. Ended up beating out my starter for the Pokemon I loved the most, and Dragon Quest III strongly reminds me of that. But the mechanical systems of Dragon Quest, more so than Pokemon, I would say, lend themselves to this interpretive, creative, personal storytelling experience.
Right. It's
and I mean the NPCs, the story, the world building of Dragon Quest III are absolutely beautiful and very dense. There's so much NPC dialogue in the game, so it's not as if you're just kind of thrown into this sandbox where you go kill Baramos and that's it. You're on this quest to follow in your father's footsteps to kill Baramos, and you're helping out towns and individuals along the way with their own mini stories. It's just about how you interpret your character's place in those stories. It's about the window you look through into the world of Dragon Quest III.
I think that's a great way to put it. And I think we haven't really highlighted quite the breadth of those mini stories just yet. It's not just about the little hints that people give you all around the world, but the problems that they're going through and contending with. There's quite a diversity of cultures that you'll run into, each of which are dealing with their own little struggles, small and large, sometimes depending on their proximity to the Demon Lord's castle. And those problems are sometimes tethered together in unexpected ways. And it's just a matter of unraveling them for yourself.
Dragon Quest loves to subvert your expectations. It might appear on the surface like a generic, typical RPG, but there are so many, surprisingly so many little twists and little turns here and there that make it an extraordinarily memorable experience. And my memory is garbage, but I remember Dragon Quest III pretty well.
And something that subverted my expectations immediately upon playing this game is look at these sprite animations. We haven't drawn attention to them just yet, but the animations in the Super Famicom version, especially of this game, are absolutely astounding.
So impressive
for the hardware and the time. And I really
don't know how they did it.
Quite believe
I don't know how they
there
made
are so
these
many
animations.
Enemies have unique animations for different kinds of attacks, and it caught me by surprise. This game is probably the most visually appealing to me of all of the Dragon Quest games.
I can understand that opinion entirely. This is a
beautiful art
game.
Style. It's got these deep colors, and I just absolutely adore it.
I mean, I'm not that big a fan of the SNES, mostly for aesthetic reasons. But this stands up there among my favorite SNES games aesthetically. I think this is a gorgeous game, and the animations were somehow preserved almost completely for the Game Boy Color version of this remake.
It was absolute
which
magic.
is really impressive.
And
but the animations, they just speak for themselves. They're incredible, and they only get better. The first proper boss in this game has this one animation that, honestly, whenever I watch it happen, I feel scared. I feel scared for my life. It is a horrifying. There's this. He's got
whenever
this
he's
swing.
going to feel a critical hit,
I feel like I'm about to get blown across the country.
It's absolutely mesmerizing, some of these animations. But I don't want to linger on it too much, but something that the current Switch port of this game completely omitted, and definitely for the worse. If you're going to play this game, play the NES one, play this one, play the Game Boy Color version, and I'm holding out hope, and I've got a lot of hope, that the HD 2D remake that was just announced is going to be a similarly wonderful version of Dragon Quest III.
Look at these anteaters. Just what they're like telling you. Look at what are they? Their tongues. The way their tongues are animated, it's so unnecessary. There's so much detail and life in these animations. I love Pokemon Crystal's animations, but this game is very clearly taking advantage of just what you can do with animation.
Right, and the DS versions of Dragon Quests 4, 5, and 6 also keep in the tradition of these animations and do a spectacular job.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely recommend checking out at least the DS version of 5 is the way that I
do not play the DS version of Dragon Quest 4. Do not play the NES version.
We just got some narrative qualms with that one.
If you really like Dragon Quest 4, but you hate the auto battle system, and you shouldn't, but if you do, then you can play the DS version of the game. That's okay. That's alright. But I'm not going to talk about Dragon Quest 4 too much right now. But in Dragon Quest 4, unlike in Dragon Quest 3, you are not manually controlling... During the majority of Dragon Quest 4, you are not manually controlling your character's actions. You're using a series of tactics, as the game calls them, to tell your party to be offensive, defensive, to save MP, to not use any MP. And what they do is sort of a thing that you have to get a feel for based on their AI. And it is a completely different Dragon Quest experience mechanically that somehow still manages to retain the power of Dragon Quest III's battle system. But in the remakes, if you're gonna play the DS version of Dragon Quest IV, just know that it has ruined the ending of the game, and also you can play manually, or you can use auto battle. If you play the DS version of Dragon Quest IV, I recommend you don't use manual.
More so the post game. Just turn it off before the post game.
Yes, after the credits roll, just don't turn it on again.
So you can see,
anyway,
I've been slightly careless with my equipment, but you saw, like, I got almost completely wiped out, and then I equipped some items, and I was able to hold my own perfectly through that cave. It really can't be understated just how the slightest bit of added planning and thought can absolutely change the way that you make your way through this game.
The battles in Dragon Quest III aren't just within the combat screen. They are also within your gold management, with your equipment management, and with your preparation and how you use stat augmenting seeds, when you use those seeds. And perhaps now is a good time to talk about the thing that happens later on. We're going to get into plenty of spoilers, but this is maybe a tier 1 spoiler of Dragon Quest III. Later on in the game, you'll reach a point where you gain the ability to reclass your party members, and I'm sure Jordan has a lot to say about that.
Yeah, at level 20, any of your characters, upon reaching the Dharma Temple, is able to reclass into any other class in the game, save for the Sage, which is an elusive secret class, which can only be reclassed into by the goof off, the Jester. Unless you have a specific kind of book, in which case anybody can reclass into it.
But there's only one of those books available in the NES.
Right.
And there's 2 of them available in the remakes.
Right. And reclassing is one of the most exciting mechanics in this game. It seems like a very simple thing. You take
if the game wasn't already mechanically exciting enough.
It's kind of a...
You gotta be prepared for reclassing.
Now you have to be prepared for reclassing. To quote, or rather paraphrase, Earthbound's marketing. reclassing in this game means that every character, the character that you reclass gets their stats halved, and they keep all of their abilities, and they start back from
And then
level 1, and
they're
they
transformed into the class of your choosing.
right. We have reached the
But
old
they
man
keep
of
their
legend.
spells.
Here.
They keep all their spells,
Right, all their
half
spells,
of their
all their
stats,
abilities,
and now
and
they're another class back at level 1.
And
But because, level 1 is scary, I'm sure Jordan was about to say this, level 1 is scary, but because you've had your stats halved at this point, your level 1 now is far, far more powerful than your original level 1
right,
was.
than a level 1 you might have had at the start of the game. It's just a signifier to show that you have your experience points have gone all the way down, but that doesn't mean that you're anywhere near as weak as you were at the beginning of the game. And that means you can have different combinations of abilities, like a warrior with healing spells or attack spells. You can have a fighter that has the speed and luck of a thief. There are just so many different kinds of combinations you can have, and every time I've played this game, I've been able to find different ways to make use of it.
Like, there are already so many possibilities with the class that you start the game with, and then you toss in reclassing, and it changes it completely. You might not even want to even reclass at all, and that's completely viable. You don't need to reclass at all. You'll end up being much higher leveled than a player whose party was reclassed, and you'll be able to make it through the game pretty fine. I imagine. I've never done it, but statistically, the difference is really just in your stats and what spells you have available.
Right, you might think, or may be kind of afraid to reclass if you're feeling comfortable with your party, but the benefits of reclassing far outweigh the detriments in almost every instance.
And it's just so fun.
Yeah, it's a really fun addition to the mechanics, and
as well, we won't see any right now, but with the addition of an enemy called a metal slime, grinding in Dragon Quest actually becomes kind of fun. More fun than I would say in most other JRPGs I've played, because a metal slime has very high evasion, very low health, and obscene defenses. So if you manage to land a hit on a metal slime, it's probably only going to do 1 damage. It's very hard to land a hit, but when you manage to land 3 or 4, maybe 5 hits on a metal slime, you get an enormous amount of experience. So once you let's say you reclass 3 of the members of your party, that's your whole party other than the hero, of course. You just go play around with metal slimes for a while, and it won't take that long to catch back up stat-wise to your party before you reclass them.
Right, and on the topic of grinding, I think it's important to note that this is another feature that JRPGs get a lot of flack for. Though I think maybe not... maybe they shouldn't be. Grinding is often a feature that's used to... it's inherently in the a part of JRPGs, because if you decide to, you can just go and level long enough that you can destroy anything in your path. But you rarely have to, as long as you plan smart with your equipment, with your gold, and make full use of your party.
If you have the desire to challenge yourself, when a boss wipes your whole party, your thought. I would encourage you to let your thought process not be, well, this boss killed me, time to grind for 10 minutes. I would say, revive your party, do what you need to do, maybe deal with your equipment a little better, and give it another go, because when you die in Dragon Quest, unless you reset your console, which is another thing you can do if you would like to preserve your gold, you're going to be gaining XP on the way to a boss, on the way to another part of the dungeon. You're going to be able to manage your resources better or differently. You're going to be able to maybe get better or worse luck running away. Go and try a boss at least a couple of times before you completely throw in the towel. And then you can... The beauty of grinding is that it allows you to form your own difficulty. Rather than selecting easy, normal, hard, very hard at the opening of a game, grinding is a much more fluid form of difficulty management, which works so well because of how many possibilities there are in this game with your classes, with your equipment, and all of that. It would be impossible to perfectly balance it for every single player's experience. And so Dragon Quest III, like a lot of good JRPGs, has decided to toy with the conventions of the gameplay mechanics to provide a lot of versatility, a lot of variance, a lot of diversity in how you can play the game. And if you choose to play the game in a way that is just too difficult, you can augment that. You can deal with that yourself. You can change, you can grind just for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, get 1 or 2 levels, 3 or 4 levels, depending on who you are, what your party is, what boss you're fighting. It's a very dynamic, fascinating means of balancing a game's difficulty. And I would encourage anyone who despises grinding to just kind of try to think about it a different way, to alter your mindset there, because it is doing something that is understandably boring to many people, but it's something that a good JRPG can make absolutely beautiful.
But also try, well said, of course, but also try not grinding every so often. You'll be surprised at just how a bit of resourceful play can change your experience and make it so that it's almost entirely unnecessary to resort to grinding. I wanted to highlight this NPC here because she highlights herself another little tidbit of Dragon Quest's quiet storytelling. There was once a traveler's door in the far eastern regions of Aliahan, but I have heard it's been sealed off ever since the war. So we don't get a whole lot of background about Aliahan in this game, but there is this kind of quiet implication that it was this kind of empire that stretched out to the corners of the world and was humbled at some point and locked off. And by acquiring
that's a good word.
By acquiring this magic ball that everybody, if you've noticed, everybody's been telling me about. There's some guy in Reeve who has a magic ball that I might want to get my hands on. We're going to be able to open that Traveler's Gate and go beyond into other parts of the globe that were otherwise inaccessible to us. Yeah, travel is and becoming worldly is a pretty big theme of Dragon Quest, and one that would be carried over into many other role-playing games such as Earthbound. I think it took some inspiration, at least, from Dragon Quest III's handling of it.
I'd imagine that every JRPG post to Dragon Quest III was partially inspired by Dragon Quest III.
Well, it had to be.
It's like making a platformer and trying to say, oh, Mario 1 has nothing to do with this platform.
Mario 1 means nothing to me.
Nothing to me. Perhaps it would be more accurate to call Dragon Quest III the Doom of JRPGs.
Very possible. If Dragon Quest 1 and 2 are the Wolfenstein 3D of JRPGs, then this is the Doom. Likewise, Super Mario Bros. 3, also from 1988, pretty much codified the platforming genre. Bravo.
I mean, we haven't specifically talked about this, but the dungeon design in Dragon Quest III is absolutely and without a doubt the simplest, best dungeon design I've ever played in the game. I mean, some of my favorite games are the 3D Zelda games. I love Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask in particular, and then to a bit of a lesser extent, Breath of the Wild. That is a whole can of worms I cannot open right now. But Dragon Quest III's dungeons they're kind of just random encounter mazes, which can and has been used as an insult, but if you think about this game's mechanics, what better way to do a dungeon than a series of winding tunnels filled with treasure and especially in Dragon Quest IV, they would introduce a lot more kinds of traps and unique elements, and where you're just getting into constant random encounters with an end goal in mind. It means that every dungeon, no matter how big or small it is an endurance test. It is a test of your resource management and your skill and your ability to manage combat encounters effectively. Every encounter you go, if you have a mage on your party, a mage's physical attacks aren't going to be very good. So you're not going to want to really be using spells on every random encounter you get. And that means, you're going to have your mage just kind of poking enemies for 1 damage. The rest of your party is going to need to carry them. And maybe you'll get into a random encounter that is especially nightmarish, and you'll say, well, I need to whip out a spell.
Right.
And that means you've just lost, 13 MP out of your 40 MP. That's huge. If you get to a boss at the end of this dungeon, or even if you don't and you're just going through more and more random encounters, that lost MP is the echoes, the reverberations that a word? Reverberation? That's the word?
It's a word.
These vibrations are going to be felt for the rest of this dungeon, and arguably for the rest of the entire game.
Very much so, and I think dungeon variety also very much comes in the forms of the enemy variety. There's a vast number of enemies in this game, each with very different kinds of tactics and strategies and abilities, and you'll have to find different ways to work around them. Maybe there's a certain enemy that you become accustomed to using the surround spell on, so that they won't wallop you with massive physical attacks. Or you'll come across an enemy that you'll be compelled to get in stop spell, so that they won't be able to buff the other group, the group of enemies around them. You form all of these little strategies for every little piece of or every little enemy, which is just a little piece of Dragon Quest's larger enemy puzzle. And I think it's wonderful. And of course, enemy dungeon variety has a lot to do with the way that dungeons are structured as well. They're not always just horizontal mazes. Often they have multiple layers to them. And remember, this game actually came out before A Link to the Past, and it already featured towers that could be traversed up and down by falling down through different floors to access otherwise inaccessible areas. It was very innovative. And now we're going to talk to this old man to get the magic ball. How did you get in here anyway? Yes or no? Oh my, that's
well, we used the thief key. The thief key, may I remind you, the thief key that we took from an old man, or we were given by an old man who stole the thief key from the thief Bakota, who is now in jail in Aliyaham. We will be using this thief key for quite some time until we get a better key. And
don't forget,
it's this one detail that the game has just subtly just kind of nipped at, and it just builds into everything else. Now there's this old guy who's like, oh, how did you get in here? You had the thief key.
As soon as we got the thief key, too, there was a shortcut that could take us all the way back to Aliyahan Castle, which we used to unlock several doors that were locked by doors that could only be opened using the thief key. And still, there are other doors in Aliyahan we can't open yet until we get better keys. This game very much...
it's a spider web. It's a spider web of mechanics.
It did sort of the Metroidvania thing, progression, better than Metroid itself did at the time, if you could believe it. So the legend continues. Of course,
here,
Ortega's
Dragon
reputation
Quest III is the first ever Souls-like game.
Very well may be. The ball will break the seal, blocking the portal.
We've achieved the magic ball.
We have achieved the magic ball.
And that cauldron.
Yeah, what a adorable cauldron. What was I gonna say? Dragon Quest III's Metroidvania structure expands far beyond these little, like, this is a great vertical slice of the entire experience here. We gather information.
Slice, of course, being a a term coined by Tim Rogers.
I don't think it was coined by him, but he liked using it.
A term that I learned of through Tim Rogers.
Right. It's a term where one little section of the game sort of encapsulates the spirit of the whole by including almost all of its features in small ways. And
like the first level of Mario 1.
Right. And Dragon Quest III's first Country of Aliyahan shows us basically everything that we're going to be doing throughout the game, but in more complex and elaborate ways. I also want to note briefly that this little thing where the party members follow you, not in every role-playing game, not in the Final Fantasy games, but why not?
Pokemon fans riot when this is not in a new Pokemon game. Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver did that, and then people get furious that it's not in other Pokemon games. And honestly, they have a right to be furious, but I'm not going to get into that.
Let's grab this chain sickle.
It's a beautiful little detail. It's just an absolute joy to see these characters going around with you all the time. Then you get into a combat encounter and you're viewing from their eyes the enemies who are locked dead on.
And I think maybe it's worth noting that the other party members only appear in battle in Final Fantasy, whereas they only appear on the overworld in Dragon Quest. Now I want to draw attention to the training suit here. We don't have a fighter on our team. None of our guys can equip it, but if we did, this would be an extremely important moment in the playthrough, because we would have to... There aren't many pieces of equipment for the fighter to equip. So getting the training suit becomes a much higher priority here than it would than it is for us now, because we don't have a fighter on the team.
So we would, if we had a fighter, we'd want to buy equipment for everyone in our party, but because we have to so wisely spend our gold, if you've played the game before without a fighter maybe, and you've maybe noticed or taken note of the fact that fighter gear is so rare, now you'd be like, well, I really want to get this fighter gear, which means that you're not getting equipment for other members in your party. And if you've just given your fighter a new piece of equipment and the rest of your party hasn't gotten it, maybe for a little short segment of the game, you'll switch up your party order to put your fighter near the front.
Right.
I'm telling you, the equipment in this game is a huge aspect of the mechanics, and you don't really get that in too many other JRPGs. I tend to just get a piece of equipment, put it on if it's an upgrade, and then never really think about it. But every piece of equipment in Dragon Quest, not only is it so significant to the combat, but it's an investment. You can't get your full money's worth back when selling a piece of equipment. But if you acquire a piece of equipment in a dungeon and you don't want to equip it, you probably don't want to sell it immediately, because the more gold you have on hand, the more gold you stand to lose if you game over. And you can store your gold in a bank, but only in increments of 1,000, and you have to go to a bank to do that, so it's a bit of an inconvenience. So you might not always be perfectly managing your gold. You're probably going to have some 900, 800 gold on hand at a given time, and some amount of gold in the bank, but you're spending gold so often that you probably won't ever have that much gold saved up unless you have a specific item in mind. And you could take the combat out of this game, and it would still be an interesting, economy game. It would be interesting to manage your resources, your gold, effectively. It's
something that the sequels capitalize on.
There's not an element of Dragon Quest that feels wasted.
Every single system is tethered to something else. It's not. It's a full system.
It is streamlined. It is elegant. It is effective.
This is a little thing I want to highlight as well. That the remakes added, but it was introduced in Dragon Quest. Was introduced in Dragon Quest V for the Super Famicom, that diversifies the melee combat. You've got whips and boomerangs, which can strike multiple enemies at once. Whips damage one enemy group, while boomerangs will damage all enemies, though in decreasing increments. So it's just
in the NES games, they don't do that.
Right. It's just another way that the equipment, though, ties into, or equipment management ties into battle strategy. And later on, still, there are pieces of equipment that can be used like items in battle, which can cast spells. So you might want to keep a sword on somebody to cast a spell instead of as a piece of equipment. It's just all of these different layers to the equipment system really build this sense that everything is important. Everything has to be taken into consideration.
I would say that the whips, the boomerangs, the diversified melee weapon mechanics are one of my, if not my number one favorite addition to the remakes of this game and of later Dragon Quests, because that just, trust me, even the most basic melee attack that you can perform, and then the few items in the game, like the few weapons that maybe will shoot a fireball if you use them, that's perfectly fine. But the addition of well, maybe I want a weapon that will do less damage to enemies but damage all enemies in a group, that's just an absolutely amazing addition to the mechanics. Another reason I'd recommend playing the SNES version or the Game Boy Color version of Dragon Quest 3 or the HD 2D remake version, probably.
Yeah, you should play them all first, but that by no means discounts the NES version.
Absolutely.
You may be turned off initially by the slow walking speed, but it really does contain almost everything we've talked about, save for some small additions like personality mechanics and
just put the battle speed on 8.
Right. Now we're going to blow up this wall, and it's going to be freaking awesome. Now getting through the Cave of Enticement will allow us access to the rest of the world, which we can see on this map.
Oh, the map. The map is awesome. Now, if we use the map, geography students may recognize that this map bears a striking resemblance to the map of real life.
It has a massive effect on. I mean, it looks so familiar that you want to seek out places that you know in real life. You have some kind of place in mind. What's in Japan? What's in Europe? You have these ideas of where important areas might be located, and you seek them out. As soon as you get the boat in the second act of the game, you have free reign to discover all of these areas at your own pace, and with only a couple of exceptions, which can be accessed through some other means. And I think we should get into that now. This has been a bit of a look at the
tour of the intro.
Tour of the intro. We thought it was pretty important to show off,
especially making your party. That's by far, I think. I mean, we've talked about so much of the game, but for me at least, the party system is what so strongly differentiates this Dragon Quest from the next Dragon Quest from the next Dragon Quest.
Right. The party system is simply incredible. And we can show off a little bit more of the broader world behind Dragon Quest III as we take a look at a late game save file I've got prepared here. So I've strategically placed us here at the Dharma Temple just to show it off, and also demonstrate how places change at night. We didn't really get a look at that.
Why don't we reclass one of our party members just for the heck of it?
Can I? Oh, I guess I can. You can reclass party members multiple times. It's not just a single time thing. If they're at level 20, they are eligible to be reclassed.
But of course, if you have a mage, you may want to wait until the mage is a higher level and have learned more powerful spells. If you've played the game before, you may even have specific spells in mind.
Right. Now,
For example, I would never dream of reclassing a cleric if they haven't learned a revive spell.
Just want to just want to give you a little bit of information here. This is for my second playthrough of the game. I started with a thief, a cleric, and a merchant. And it was, or not a cleric, a mage actually. I only had the hero on healing duties, and that changed my playthrough significantly. And when I reclassed them, they carried over all of the positive attributes of the previous classes, and it became all the stronger for it. Compared to my first playthrough, where I played it pretty safe, I reclassed spellcasters into stronger spellcasters that time. But I'd recommend going for a bit of a more diverse ability pool. Reclassing clerics into soldiers and the like can really have a much more beneficial impact on your party dynamic.
Jordan, can you do the honors of laying out the famous Mr. Gentleman quote? Mr. Gentleman is
put me on the spot here. I don't know if I remember.
YouTuber. He makes fantastic videos about Dragon Quest.
Probably the best Dragon Quest III video on the entire internet.
Fantastic Dragon Quest IV video as well.
Perhaps you want to reclass a fighter or a warrior into a sage. Now that's a good idea, and one a lot of people like.
But
MP is only gained through wisdom stat gains.
Calculated by your wisdom stat gains.
Which are low early on. So you got to put in a bit of a plan to make stuff work. Now that's a little bit easier to do in this version of the game because level ups come slightly faster, I believe. And there are classes like the Thief and the Merchant, which actually gain MP, even though they don't have significant abilities to use them on. So that's specifically so that they can reclass into spellcasters, which can make better use of the MP that they bring over.
Of course, even if you're going to switch to another class, you want to switch someone into a cleric, but they don't really have very high MP, if any MP at all. That might not even be a necessarily bad decision because they'll maintain the stats they had already. Let's assume you're reclassing a soldier into a cleric. They'll maintain so much of their strength and their stamina. They're still going to be a very, very strong cleric. And even if their MP is in proportion is kind of low, they're still going to learn healing spells. And even if they don't have as much MP as your wizard, your cleric might, your sage might have, using an occasional healing spell isn't that taxing on your MP. So even like the worst possible class swapping decisions in this game are still going to like make some sort of sense. They will have a niche use, and you can just kind of experiment with anything. Again, like we went over earlier, even with the worst party imaginable, unless you have like 3 goof-offs or something truly idiotic. If a boss or a dungeon is just too hard, you've thrown yourself at it 5, 6, 7 times, spend a little bit of time of getting stronger, or go whip out some gold from the bank, or gather some more gold, change your
Or
equipment
gamble
up,
on
change
monster
your party
arena
order,
battles.
gamble. Oh, the gambling is so good in this game. And just go at it again, and like any JRPG, for the most part, you're guaranteed to eventually get into that sweet spot of difficulty, and it probably isn't going to take that long.
Right, and you'll find, which has surprised me playing and getting into this genre, is that every time I return to a game that I've already beaten, it takes less and less time for me to get over previously massive roadblocks. In fact, like Final Fantasy IV, I had to grind a lot the first time I played through that game. But as I got a better grasp of the ATB system, it became less and less necessary for me to do so. I want to show off a bit, like, here's some evidence that these guys weren't always... That these guys were not always... Penny was a merchant before she was a... before she was a fighter, and you can see she has this ability called Shop Call, which can summon any previous shop that you've been to buy from.
Well, that's awesome. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, we have Keaton used to be a thief and is now a sage, and so he brings over X-Ray and Kursoff and Hawkeye. Or I think Kursoff is... Now, Hawkeye is Hawkeye and Tiptoe, and Thief Nose are obviously...
Thief Nose.
Big thief abilities.
So you'll maintain your spells and your spells and your abilities, but really all that is really changing is your potential to learn new spells and abilities that you would normally learn as a class, and of course your stats, which are being halved.
Right. Over here, and I think this is a great addition to this version of the game, they could rename your party members. So if you reclass somebody and you feel that is a significant step on their journey to becoming a different person, Chad can attest to this. You can even rename them or change the way that they're referred to, their nickname, and it might change your perception of that character significantly.
I began my first playthrough with a goof off named Bud Dill, which is an absolute stupid name. And I kind of ditched him early on because I realized I realized just how bad the goof off was. I said, "Yeah, not for my first time playing this game." And I picked up a merchant and I went on for the rest of the game. But after a significant event occurred and I had to say goodbye to my merchant, I then I went back and I picked up Bud Dill. I trained him up, reclassed him into a fighter. And at that moment, he became Bud Dust.
Bud Dust, yeah. It was part of a much larger story, which we'll get into as we show off more of the world. But what should we reclass Penny into? She's a fighter now. Maybe it would be beneficial to make her into a... She was a merchant. Maybe it'd be better to make her into a mage for powerful offensive spells.
Yeah, you don't have a mage. You have a sage.
I have a sage right now. I do not have a mage.
The sage is able to cast the spells of both a cleric and a mage.
Yeah. So maybe we'll give that a try.
So now, even if you have 3 mages, though they will, for the most part, they'll learn spells at different times, most likely, but they'll have the same general pool of spells.
There's now she turned into a cat. There's a piece of equipment which makes them wear this like plush cat outfit. And because this guy optimized Penny's equipment, she is now wearing it.
But what was I saying? Oh, even if you have a party of 3 mages or 3 clerics, they might know the same spells, but because of how crucial MP management is, and the many different sorts of spells you can cast, and all the little microscopic details and variance in stat gains, those 3 mages are going to be pretty different, and you're going to be giving them different equipment because you can't just afford to give them all the same equipment, and that affects your order of them. And then the spells are so good. The magic seems so good.
We're showing off here.
Song is so good.
Now this is the Ramia, which is God's servant. We unlock the ability to travel atop Ramia when we collect the 6 orbs scattered all throughout the land, and crack
Oh,
open
warning.
Ramia's egg.
Warning, we're going all the way into it now.
Oh yeah, if you're not convinced yet, or if you are already convinced that you should play this game, definitely stop watching this video because we're going to begin really talking about what happens in the end game here. And throughout the entire adventure. We want to show off the world, and I think one of the best ways to do it is this way, on top of Ramia here, listening to this beautiful music. So after we
Talk
leave,
about the orbs.
well, yeah, but first I'll talk a little bit about the game's structure. Now, games like the original Legend of Zelda and Dragon Quest I just sort of plop you into a world and ask you to figure it out. And A Link to the Past and Dragon Quest III took a bit of a more nuanced approach. Now, if we were to go through the Cave of Enticement, we would come to a portal that takes us here. And here we go. And this is the town of Romilly. And when we get to Romilly, obviously a bit of a play on Italy and Rome, we're located right where Rome should be. Aliahan Zero is our new king. So, of course, maybe you don't know what he's talking about there. I'm Aliahan Zero. But one of the little micro stories here is that the king's crown was stolen by a thief named Kandar, and we had to go.
Kandar.
And we had to go get it back. And we can actually become the ruler of this country when we get it back. The king gives us the ability to do so. And I think we actually
The king just kind of wants to hang out. I can sympathize. I can empathize with this king. He doesn't really want to be king.
In the NES version, I think we can. Actually, we're not. Let's not save here. I thought we could do it again. I know in the NES version you definitely can, but we find out that this guy is actually a huge gambling addict. And
that's a bit much.
Maybe a little bit too...
huge gambling addict.
Okay, maybe All right. But he wanted to give up his station as the king so that he could go become a gambler here at the Monster Arena.
Yeah.
Pretty much full time, just giving up his duties completely. And maybe we should gamble here a little bit just to show it off.
It's no wonder why, because the gambling in this game is just perfect. Like so many mechanics in Dragon Quest III, it is.
Ooh, what do we go for?
At first, it seems so simple. If we're gonna go for Killer Ape, that guy's unstoppable. Killer Ape is unstoppable. It seems so simple, and it is quite simple. You simply bet on a group of monsters. There's a group of monsters presented, and you bet on an individual monster. Monsters that are less likely to win will give better rewards, and monsters that are more likely to win will give lower rewards. And you bet 40 gold. The monster's got double odds. Oh, he might actually win.
Wow!
Wow! We did it!
We got
it! So you managed to win.
Oh, nice!
It's just gold. In other Dragon Quest, the gambling would involve.
Gold.
It's a lot of gold.
Oh my god!
The gambling would.
Well, I'm out.
I told you, Killer Ape. They'd start introducing stuff like where you spend gold to get coins, and then you gamble the coins. In this game, you're just gambling straight gold. There's one game to play. It's betting on monsters. There's nothing to it. And it seems really simple, and maybe you don't like gambling, but especially early on in the game, because of how valuable gold is, you bet 40 gold out of your 50 gold, and you win 3 times that amount. That is so much more to spend on equipment.
It is a lot,
and how your gambling can... Think about the way this game's story goes about with your characters.
Look at this day-night cycle.
If you win in gambling a lot, that's now a part of your story. You just won a ton of money. You just made a ton of gold. You're spending it on new equipment. That changes your combat. That changes your. It's hard to comprehend just how many little facets there are to this game.
Right, because
gambling is so much more than it seems on the surface.
Because of the way the story is handled, you're much more inclined to take any bit of the gameplay as something that really happened to these characters, because there is not much of a written story that's supposed to tell you how you're supposed to think of them. So
your characters don't react like, oh shit, we lost the gambling. Your characters are whatever you feel they are.
Yeah, and it's a very significant part of this game's appeal, I think. I was talking a bit about the structure. When we leave Romilly, we can go to the Tower of Champagne over here to fight Kandar and get the crown back. We'll encounter him a couple of more times, and we can go north
It's an
to
amazing
the
character.
sleeping city of No One Eels. We have all of these little quests, which ultimately culminate in this trading thing where we have to bring pepper from one country over to the east to one over in the west, and once we do that, the King of Portoga, after receiving the pepper, gives us the boat, and the boat gives us free
The
reign
boat
of
is
the
like
world.
a sea-bound Ramia.
And much like when the second half of A Link to the Past, everything a sea-bound Ramia, much like A Link to the Past, the entire structure of the game changes, and I think this game might even do a better job of signaling to you that it is completely open-ended. You can go to there's this big quest in the latter part of the game to get the 6 orbs, but also to get the final key, because the final key will open the way to several of the orbs that are inaccessible to you at first. And
where is this final key? Where am I even supposed to find out where this final key is?
You have no idea, but you keep coming across these jail doors. You talk to NPCs, and you follow these leads, and eventually you find it. But if you already know where it is at the start of a next playthrough, you can
go right to it.
You can go right to it if by following the just a couple of steps that are necessary to get it, and it drastically changes a second go around. This is one game that you're going to feel really compelled, or at least that I felt extremely compelled to play again. And obviously, it's the Dragon Quest I've played the most for sure.
Like Zelda 1, at this point in the game, once you get the boat, it becomes an open world game in a very different sense from how open world games are kind of known nowadays. Like in Breath of the Wild, like in Bethesda's Fallout games. It is an open world game in the sense that you gain this ability to go on a boat, and you can go wherever that boat will allow you to go. You have this quest for the 6 orbs, which seems very simple, but how you acquire these 6 orbs and where they are, it's a complete mystery. You're not told the locations of these 6 orbs. You just have to explore and to discover them. You have to interact with NPCs, go into caves, perform tasks like there's. It's not that every single orb is acquired through a process of going to a town, hearing someone tell you about the orb, going down to a dungeon, beating a boss, getting the orb. There's only 2 of the orbs that end in a boss fight, to my knowledge, and the rest are they're also uniquely acquired, and the order you get them in is fluid and based on when you go to an area. If you think you can challenge the monsters there, if you're resourceful enough to get past harder monsters, you might get an orb that someone else got later on, and you get better equipment and more gold, and it just keeps going. It just
keeps spiraling.
Going.
Yeah,
it is
Dragon Quest 3 never ends until it ends. But I want to highlight a couple of things about this location in particular. It makes great use of the day-night cycle. We are located right now very close. This is the closest town to the Archfiend's lair. And when we come during the day, everything is destroyed. There is nothing left, no people. We only come across corpses and poison marshes and the wreckage of places that used to stand. And we come across this corpse. Something's written on the wall. I'm glad I could pass on the orb during my life.
Maybe it says KAJAM.
Now, maybe it does say KAJAM. Now, this guy, we have to come back at night, and it's a little surprising when we come here. If you're sailing here directly from Portoga, which is to the north, and you follow the stream down to this town, you'll likely arrive first at night, and then maybe come back during the day sometime and be surprised that it's completely destroyed. So we're going to access the city at night so that I can show you what that looks like.
Really
by the way, right here,
cycle.
Right there to the north, that's Baramos Castle.
The lair of the Archfiend Baramos. I mean, you go through the first part of this game, all you really know is that you're searching for Baramos and searching for Ortega or whatever clues he may have left behind.
It's the village of Tadenki. See, now everybody's awake, but there's a little bit of an eerie Necrogon Mountains. It's a bit of an eerie tone to it.
Necrogon Mountains.
Metal Gear.
Necrogron. Second floor
Baramos
basement.
looks deep in the neck. So these guys know all about it. I don't know about that guy. What? You thought Baramos already destroyed this village? No, you're doing great. You're not afraid of... Oh, there's a bit of a text overflow. It's alright. It is a fan translation after all. They do great work. I think we're pretty much set. But I wanted to note earlier, and just kind of slipped my mind, but there were 3 free humans we were able to fly. Yeah, and now I can do it with the help of Ramia. By the way, there's no cutscene that tells you that Ramia exists. You just talk to people and eventually come across it. You can find several of the orbs without even knowing that Ramia is the end goal. Though I wanted to note very quickly about a previous thing. When you're going to get the crown back from Kandar in the NES version, the crown is the best helmet for the wizard. So, and there's no reason not to just elope with it unless you are simply a good person. If you want to grab the helmet and or the crown and keep it for the rest of the game, there's really nothing stopping you but your own conscience. And I think that's a pretty interesting thing.
There's a lot of stuff like that.
The equipment is just tied into the storytelling so elegantly.
Again, not a bit of this game goes wasted.
So we could only get through this with the use of the final key. So we can talk to this guy from outside, or we can talk to... yeah, I think we can. Can we talk to him from outside? No, we can talk to him during the day, his corpse, and find out that he wanted to give the orb to us. And but we can't get through without the final key, so that's one of the things that sets in motion our quest for it. It's just all of these little threads that seem strewn kind of senselessly become so beautifully intertwined by the end of the game.
They build up. They are brick by brick building up the castle that is Dragon Quest III. Don't laugh.
I was going to say, if A Link Between Worlds is a brick house of a video game, then Dragon Quest III is most certainly a castle. This is the shrine where we discover Ramia. I don't know if I need to show every single location, but I do want to at least...
There's quite a
few notable ones. I just want to show off this beautiful snowy tower here.
I'm a snow
fiend.
Here
are all of the orbs that we acquired. We acquired all of them through very different adventures and stories. Again, as Chad noted, not always ending in boss fights. There are just so many different kinds.
Every town has some kind of unique atmosphere about it, and a great many of the towns have an entire mini story weaved into them, and not even all of them relate to the orbs. Some of them are just another location on the way to the orbs. I'm sure there's plenty of towns in this game that are entirely maybe all of them are completely optional, save like one or two, right? You don't really need to engage with NPCs. There's a lot of towns in the game you don't really even need to go to.
I know at least one that I did not go to. You don't even have to go to Noah Neal's to free the Sleeping City. That's just something that you do because you want to. You don't even need to really get the crown for the king at all. As long as you progress by getting the magic key and the pyramid, you can, and the pepper for the king of Portoga, you'll be fine.
Of course, once you've traveled the world and you've puzzled out all these riddles and hints and little tidbits of information you've found from NPCs, you gather up all the orbs and you receive the gift of the Ramia, and then with Ramia the ability to travel to Baramos' castle. And now here's where the real big spoilers come into play. This is your last chance.
Well, before we talk about that, I did want to. I was flying over to the merchant town because I wanted to tell a bit about that story before we get too far into the end game stuff.
Sure.
If that's appropriate, you think?
Yeah.
I want, because we've been talking about the orbs. I want to say a little bit more about the stories that happen surrounding them. This is one of the most memorable quests in the entire game. You come here at first, and it is completely barren. There is only one old man there who's like, "Oh, if I had a merchant with me, we could build a town." And depending on who you are, you may not have made a merchant. I know that I didn't when I first played the game. So I went back home. I made a merchant, and I sailed all the way back here. And when I arrived here, the merchant said, even though it had only been a little bit, the merchant said, and I didn't forget this. I wrote this down after. "I will never forget our adventures together." And that line kind of stuck with me. Surprising, like it's small, but it made me think about how the party adventures together and how we have all of these little quests that we go on, and how close they must be if this little merchant who was with us for all of 5 minutes was able to get attached to our party by just by sailing across the ocean to this town to deliver him to this old man. And once we were here, that's when the real kind of interesting stuff happened. You might not have known that this whole trope of building your own town it went all the way back to this game. It's present in Breath of the Wild, for instance. And
Yeah,
Chad,
it is hugely present in Breath of the Wild.
Chad,
It's very similar.
Yeah, Chad had an extremely unique experience with this particular town.
The line, "I'll never forget the adventures we had together," meant for Jordan something entirely different than it meant for me, because if you'll recall, after I ditched Bud Dill, the goof off, I created a merchant named Roofless. And Roofless, from the beginning of the game all the way up to this point, was an absolutely incredible addition to my party. He was highly reliable. He was gigantic. He took hits like a champ. He did great damage. He made me money, and he was kind of like my favorite member of my party. Really, he was the one that stood out the most, and that I was having the most fun with, and inventing these little moments. Like my idea of his personality and his character felt so fun and unique. And then when I reached this point of the game, and the old man told me that he needed the help of a merchant, I wasn't really sure what would happen. I wasn't sure if I left Roofless that I would never get to see him again, but I knew that it would only be right to let Roofless, this absolute unit of a man, help this old guy build a town. And so I said goodbye to Roofless and watched him build this town piece by piece. I believe you exit the town, and after day and night cycles, or revisiting, or maybe getting orbs,
I think it's tied to your progression. Yeah,
the town will steadily progress through multiple stages of development, and things seem to be going so well. The town, new rooms are being built, houses are being built, people were coming and checking it out and deciding to stay. And when the town was completely finished, Roofless took up the role of being the town's mayor. And at first, he seemed to be doing a great job, but as the days went by, people started to have a few issues with Roofless and how he was running things.
There were rumblings that he was overworking people, and eventually you see this little group hiding behind this building, I think, right here, conspiring against Roofless.
And so apparently the power just must have gone to his head. I mean, I personally don't think Roofless did, didn't do anything that wrong. Jordan disagrees. Jordan thinks that his merchant kind of became a piece of shit. I don't think Roofless was that bad. I think he's just an honest man who made some honest mistakes.
To be fair, my merchant was a far less developed character than yours.
Of course. For me, Roofless was a best friend. And when the coup was enacted, when Roofless was deposed and thrown in jail, it felt really cool, but also really sad to see Roofless just sitting there in jail. But I talked to him, and he told me that he apologized for the things that he did wrong, and that he was going to learn to become a better man. And we said goodbye. We parted for the rest of the game. And eventually I learned that I would never get to see Roofless again.
Well, you could if you came back like I am doing now.
Yes, but after a certain point in the game, I was separated from him forever.
So my merchant here, Terry, is a reference to Terrytown, although spelled, I believe, a little differently in Breath of the Wild. after some time in jail, they decide to release him, though he's giving over his power to this guy over here. This support would be helpful. So starts a bit of a more he's leaving town.
I don't know if I ever saw this.
He's going back to Aliahan. This is a moment that's added in the remake. In the original, he just stays in jail, languishing there. But now I can go pick him up again from Luisa's place, as it's known in the NES one.
But of course, at this point, I had already adopted Dill back into the party. And I just decided that was the end of Ruthless's story. I would let him travel the world or go back to running the town or do whatever he wanted to do. And that was a very standout moment for me. That was it was the sort of event that I would sooner expect in a game that had written characters with motivations and backstories and personalities and a more direct sort of narrative. But because of the way that I interpreted my character, and the guiding hand of Dragon Quest III, it led to this very profound, very memorable story experience that it's just unlike anything else.
Right. Yeah. As much as I would like to get into several of the other stories. That particular one ends with Terry realizing, or the Ruthless realizing, that in his while accumulating wealth and building his town, he has acquired the yellow orb, and he gives it over to you.
And then when you achieve all of the orbs, you get the Ramia and head to Baramos' castle.
And Baramos' castle is fantastic. And once you have a long and hard battle against him, it seems like all is well. You've conquered the world through heroism. You've become a true worldly, courageous individual, and your whole party's really gone through so much. And you're warped back to town, and everybody lauds your achievements, and it seems like everything is well. You're victorious, and then you talk to the king. And during the celebration, a booming voice interrupts and announces his presence. It's the demon lord Zoma, who isn't ready to give up just yet. He's conquered the world of darkness that's just below our own world. It is, for all intents and purposes, the underworld, a certain hell.
Dragon Quest III is already, up to that point, established so many common tropes of the genre, or even tropes of the medium. And once again, when you think that you've finally conquered Baramos and saved the world, Zoma swoops in and tells you, no, and he breaks open. He causes this huge earthquake, which breaks open this hole in the ground near Baramos' castle, and you realize that the game isn't over yet.
It's not, and there's much more waiting for us. In fact, we fall down into this world.
Into this
must have come from the world above. Welcome to Alefgard, the world of darkness. And if you don't remember the name Alefgard, the music that plays when we get a little further in will definitely spark something in your memory. We get on this boat, which is gifted to us by these kind people. We step out onto the land, and this song plays, and you know that you're in the world of Dragon Quest I. Totally complete. It's intact. It's a full-scale replica of the world, now repurposed into a completely non-linear adventure. And your quest...
The game reveals now it is a direct prequel to Dragon Quests 1 and 2.
And that the legend that you're carrying out is, in fact, that of Erdrick.
Far greater. It is far greater than simply defeating Baramos.
Now, there are many games that use the trope of the quote-unquote Disc 2 final boss, the second final boss, who's actually behind everything. But because Baramos was only ever established as just a sort of semi-generic evil presence, it doesn't really come as a full-on betrayal that he's replaced with some bigger, badder guy. In fact, it's a lot more exciting now that we have something a little more concrete. He is the leader of Baramos, where Baramos seemed to be some kind of lackey. Now we know where
Almost was just a pawn.
but a pawn, and in fact, we find there's more where he came from.
There's a bunch of other like Baramos clones. He's just like some weird animal or something. Baramos is just some guy. He's a high-ranking guy, but Baramos. Jordan just said like Baramos is not set up as a like this complex personal character. He's not a villain with like motivations and a backstory. He's just this idea of Baramos, the bad guy, the archfiend, and you play the game going after him, not really expecting him to be too fascinating of a character. So when you beat Baramos and you believe that you've finished the game, and then Zoma swoops in, it doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel like you've had your actions erased or made irrelevant, because you have conquered your world. You have explored all of those places and gathered the orbs, and now you are somewhere completely different.
But as a deeper layer to the story, we also find out, I've heard that name before, Aliahan, some man who came through here was also from that same place. We find out that we did not accomplish what our father failed to. In fact, Ortega fell into the world of darkness when he fought that demon at the volcano, and when he did, he went in search of Zoma. The story continues. We have not exited our father's shadow. We are still languishing as the quote-unquote B-tier hero to Ortega's absolute
S-tier hero.
S-tier hero. And we're going to continue to find rumors about him all over the place, and they're only going to spark more suspicion. Now more than ever, we get a sense of Ortega's struggle, his broader adventure, and up until the very final dungeon of the game. I don't know if we're going to be visiting it here, because it would take quite a bit to traverse the entire thing. But maybe we'll talk about what happens to Ortega in a moment.
Well, just to make one final comparison to Pokemon Crystal, going down to Alefgard in this game is what was very reminiscent to me. No, I guess it wasn't. I hadn't played Pokemon Crystal yet, but Pokemon Crystal does the thing where after you beat the Elite Four, you have the opportunity to travel back to Kanto, and this is yet again another JRPG trope or thing that Dragon Quest III has just pioneered as if it were nothing. The enemy types are different down here. The battle screens are different. The world is locked into a perpetual darkness, removing the day and night cycle.
Right, which was so striking on the overworld. Now it's all night, all the time, and it's especially striking in the NES version because the bars change color. The bars of the UI, they changed from white to blue at night, and now
it's a great
always
detail.
Night. Oh, I'm going to demonstrate how fast levels come when you've brought along somebody who's at level 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not too difficult to bring somebody up to speed if they haven't been around for a while.
It's much more forgiving, I'd say, than in like if you've completed your 6th gym in a Pokemon game and you find you hatched a new egg from the daycare or something. It takes a real long time, I feel, to train up Pokemon in Pokemon, even if you have some form of the XP share. In this game, you already have other party members there. So having one weaker Darth Bear, having a weaker party member isn't that big of a detriment, especially if they're a spellcaster and they've carried over spells they used to have. They're still going to be useful. It's really not going to take that long to level them up.
Right, and I can demonstrate. I can use items like the Thunder Sword to deal damage if it gets it in.
One of the big things we can't really do justice here is just how strategic and how engaging the combat is. You really have to play it to feel it. Oh man, this guy's going to kill us.
Penny is actually a lot stronger than the average fighter, probably because, or rather than the average mage, because she was a fighter.
And she was a merchant before that.
Yeah, carries over a lot of strength. Unfortunately, Keaton couldn't take it.
Technically, a way you could play this game is to start with 3 classes, reclass them to other classes, and then keep reclassing them until they've acquired basically even stats across the board and every spell they can learn. It is completely possible to do that.
Now, you've seen what it's
I
like
think
to
anyone's
not
going
have a
to, but
Vivify spell here, and here I just easily brought Keaton back to speed with that with just one spell. It has a massive effect on the way that you play the game. No longer do you need to rely heavily on gold, so long as you manage MP well. And it's just an astonishing game in scale and scope, in the way that it weaves its story very subtly and quietly along the way. And I can't stress it enough that it's one of the greats. It really is.
No matter how late in the game you get, every one of its systems remains relevant. Exploring rooms to find seeds and other items, gold, equipment, spells, MP management, party order, classes and reclassing. It's always there. It is a very consistently amazing game. It really does not let up. It's the perfect length for a game. There's no, you don't feel at the end of it that you want any more than you could get by replaying the game, and you don't feel left out of anything. It's a game that begs you to continue engaging with it, to replay it and try out different classes and manage your gold differently. Even with the same classes, every game experience is going to be so different, yet the core elements are maintained. You're going to play differently when you've acquired all this information. It's something else.
And yeah. And once you do beat the game, I mean, we've already alluded to this, but there's this booming reception when you arrive back at the back at the castle. Light has returned to the world, and you are declared Erdrick. And it just feels like you really did go on this really noteworthy, legendary adventure, that you went all over the entire world and earned this namesake that you kept hearing about in the first two Dragon Quest games. And I really can't stress enough that this was all accomplished in 1988. It didn't take a remake to realize all of this, all of this continuity, this storytelling. The
remakes are great, but
mechanics.
It's all there. It's all there in the original.
I think this remake is a wonderful realization of the experience. Though I can't rightly say that it is just 100% superior, that it superannuates the original game. They're both valuable. And
especially if you like the aesthetics of the NES more, that may just be your favorite version.
And it has some great aesthetics too. I brought us here to Zipangu because I want to highlight, I guess,
we should probably finish off here.
Right, once more, this different culture, the diversity of them that we can find, and this is also one of the most memorable stories that we have in the whole game. Down in the town of Kol in the underworld, there was a couple from Zipangu who remembered us here, and remembers what we did. And what we did here in Zipangu is we freed them from the Yamata no Orochi, which is this massive multi-headed dragon who appeared in our thumbnail for this video. And the story behind the Orochi is that it was making us it was risky. It was that the Orochi was making the villagers sacrifice their young girls to him to eat them, to devour them, so that he could bribe them with their lives. And when we first come here, there is a child here, right here, who says that they're a boy, that they've been told by their mother that they're a boy, and they're sure glad they're not a girl, because if they were a girl, they'd be sacrificed to the Orochi. Turns out, when you defeat the Orochi, finds out
her mom hid the truth so that they wouldn't get sacrificed to Orochi.
And now she's like totally accepted that part of her identity, but it goes to show yet another one of those little lines that tells an entire character's life story. When we do venture down into the cave and confront the Orochi, it's a beautiful sequence where the dragon is just breathing fire and standing in front of us and roaring. And there's no cutscene. You just have to walk directly up to the Orochi and confront it. it's a scary moment in the game where
The game does not force you to fight Orochi. You choose to fight Orochi.
It is incredibly daunting. It's one of the most beautiful moments. And we find out that the leader, Himiko, was devoured by the Orochi. That the Orochi transformed himself into Himiko, in Himiko's form, in order to get the villagers to concede to his demands. And that they never knew about this. And now that we're here, in a post-Orochi world, this priest who had previously been unable to preach his ideals is now able to get through democracy to these people. As we see, what is that? Reflecting yet again some actual historical facts about the way
it relates to the way the map is shaped, like the real world's map. It is this idea of a
world based on our own.
A Western individual coming to a new country and attempting to spread their religion or their ideals of politics.
And I really think that Zipango is one of the best storytelling moments in the entirety of the game. That it encapsulates on its own so many of the things that make Dragon Quest III so memorable. And it doesn't even have a shop or an inn, which indicates that it is not a very economically driven society.
It showcases how Dragon Quest has such a keen eye for culture and presenting locations that feel very well realized in terms of culture.
Right, and one more time, I'll show you what became of that couple from Zipango.
And Dragon Quest is just 3, 4, 5. The Dragon Quest franchise is obsessed with telling mini stories, with weaving stories across the game worlds that loosely tie into the greater narrative.
Right. And because she thought she was next in line for Orochi, she ran off, ended up falling into the underworld. And her husband is up here and ends up forging you the Sword of Kings, which will become the legendary sword of Lodo, of Erdrick.
The sword that you acquire and seek out in Dragon Quest 1. And I imagine in Dragon Quest 2.
And it's all connected.
I haven't played Dragon Quest 2.
I haven't played enough of it to say. But it's just astonishing how it never stops weaving all of those threads together. That nothing is ever completely irrelevant. And it's just fantastic. I can't say enough great things about this game. And
we could probably talk about it for the rest of our lives.
And I very well
I guess we will.
Here down at the bottom of the well.
Pachisi is a fun little mini game with
possibly the inspiration, or I don't know which came first, but Itadaki Streets was also made by Yuji Horii. This also predates Mario Party, funnily enough.
It's all Mario Party boards across the world that you can challenge with one party member at a time.
Right. I don't think we'll be challenging one just this minute, but
beautiful statues.
It is a nice visual to end the video on. So once again, I thank you for coming. This has been KAJAM and
the greatest video game of all time, Dragon Quest III.